Now, one other thing of concern to us in the time of Christmas and the New Year is how safe we find ourselves, or how well we conduct ourselves on our roads. Statistics from the National Road Safety Commission have shown that about 1,990 people died as a result of road accidents as at the end of November 2016. And comparing that to 2015, there's been a sharp rise in the number of reported deaths. And today we want to keep an eye on the roads and look at how well we can conduct ourselves to ensure that in this Christmas season and in the New Year, we stay safe and stay away from accidents. To help us do this very important discussion, I've been joined by Kwame Kodua-Etuahene, who is the head of communications at the National Road Safety Commission. Kwame, welcome into the studio.
Thanks for having us, my brother.
And a Merry Christmas.
And many operators too.
Great. Now let's look at the roads. It appears that comparing 2015 to 2016, we may not have achieved our targets in ensuring that there's a lot more safety on the road. What accounted for this sharp rise in the number of reported accidents and deaths?
Well, thank you very much. It's been a bit frustrating and a challenging year on all accounts. If you look at progress made, in fact, for the last 3 to 4 years, the last 3 years, I should say, every year we have recorded some reduction in all the indices, the number of crashes, vehicles involved, injuries and deaths. So on the back of that, this year we set out to project that given the resources and the trend, we should try to prevent deaths in excess of 1,440. Okay. But unfortunately, as you rightly said, as of the end of November, we're already in, almost close to 2,000. We never anticipated that we'll get to this stage. It is difficult to say, except again, when you look back at the trend, every election year poses similar constraints, except for 2008 and 1996. Okay. Every election year compared to the previous year records a certain rise in traffic-related deaths. We want to imagine that because it's a season of increased motorization and traffic activities.
Owing to the campaigns,
yes,
I guess.
Yes, okay. It's somehow impacting in the risk associated with these travels. But I think the Commission is taking the trouble to try to investigate exactly what the peculiar concerns are in the election year. Apart from that, the trend also shows, and the figures over time also show, that one of the biggest challenges we have is speeds. Yes, close to 60% of these cases they have happened on a flat and straight roads that are relatively good, and flat drivers often have the edge to speed when the roads are better, and especially in urban environments, when you have human settlements, the aged, young, trying to interact with the road. When we find it difficult to put our speed in check, we end up knocking down pedestrians. In fact, of this number, like previous time and consistent with the trend as well, the majority of people who suffer traffic-related deaths are not the drivers, and they are not the passengers or occupants of buses. But they are oftentimes pedestrians, yes, who use the road on foot. But because they get knocked down in isolated cases, we don't get to mirror that concerns us much. But when you put the isolated cases together, they account for close to 41% of all the related deaths that we record on our road. So the biggest concern for us is speeds, and if all of us as stakeholders will begin to focus on what we can do to get drivers to reduce their speeds, I'm sure we will significantly reduce these numbers.
And it will make a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, Kwame, you know, typically when we talk about road accidents, people just think of a car colliding into another car. Yeah. But you just raised the point that apart from that, there are situations where cars and motor vehicles run over people and all that. Yeah. Can you throw more light on the other, unknown cases that people usually don't think that, well, when it comes to road accidents, it's about two cars in an accident or colliding or whatever it is.
Yes, I think that what is emerging in recent times is also incidents of motorcycle related crashes, right, especially in Accra. If you went to the north, you would observe that when motor riders approach the traffic intersection, when the lights turn red, they would yield for pedestrians to cross.
Right.
The problem there is got to do with the use of crash helmets. But in Accra, when the traffic light turns red, motor riders have a difficulty to yield. And oftentimes you notice that when it turns red for motor riders, it often would turn green for pedestrians. Right. So in the course of that interaction, whilst the pedestrian is lawfully accessing the road, the motor rider, disciplined motor rider, often there's that pedestrian, collision, right, motor rider, motorcycle collision. So it's another area that is also beginning to pose a little bit of challenge, and we want to look at that area strongly in 2017. In fact, you know, there's a law which forbids the use of motorcycle for commercial purposes, Okada. Right. But the difficulty we get from the police is that it is often difficult to distinguish between a private user
and then a commercial
user. Okay. But oftentimes they have conducted swoops, and in the course of it, there are these challenges. But regardless, we have impressed upon them that we need to help them find innovative means of trying to have a certain control on that section of the user categories in order for us to also have an improvement.
All right. Kwame, now let's look at this angle. Lots of people think that accidents are restricted mainly to commercial vehicles, but you have access to the statistics. Yeah. Are you able to bring us to speed as to comparing, you know, private cars getting involved in accidents and then commercial cars? Because people think that, well, it's my own private car, I'm in charge of it, I have my seatbelt and I'm doing all that I need to do. But is there a tendency or the likelihood of, you know, accidents occurring both from the commercial side of things and then from the private or individual drivers?
Yes, I mean, the private drivers are as much culpable as the commercial drivers. If you have time to, if you were to visit the motor court in Accra, you'll be surprised the rate at which very educated people who were exposed get prosecuted for one offense or the other. So it cuts across. Okay. It cuts across. So if you look at the data again, I believe that 23% of these cases are passenger, bus occupants related, oftentimes passengers, but a significant percentage, which I am unable to tell at this point, are also related to the private cars. Oftentimes, the common infractions with them are speaking on the phone, taking to speeding, and the likes.
Okay. Yeah. So another point of interest to us is the fact that most of the time people lay the blame exclusively on the drivers. But is there a role pedestrians also play in ensuring safety on the roads?
Yes, we think that to focus on the driver is to oversimplify the issue. The driver is important, but even the passenger, especially in these times of Christmas, a lot of convention, out of apprehension when we get into the bus, people are likely to commit themselves to Christ and they go to sleep. Sleep in the sense that they don't quite care what happens in the course of their trip. They are not bothered if the guy is driving drunk or driving tired, taking to wrongful overtaking or taking to high speed. In fact, every time that a crash has occurred and there are survivors, we often will visit survivors as part of the investigation. And in high occupancy buses, in 8 or 9 out of 10 cases, you get a passenger telling you that he observed a certain conduct which gave him the sense that an accident was impending. But often passengers do not have the courage to speak up for one reason or the other. So everybody has a responsibility. The driver is in charge of the equipment or the vehicle, But if passengers could be assertive enough to demand that one thing is done right or the other, I'm sure we can reduce on these incidents. The pedestrian is also a road user.
Right.
The road has been perfectly designed. In most cases, or some cases, you have pedestrian crossing points. You have footbridges. For, again, all kinds of reasons, convenience at the expense of safety. Pedestrians choose to cross the road anywhere and anyhow, and it increases the risk associated to their use of the road. So you notice that if every one of us as road users, if we were to exercise some level of discipline and caution in our use of the road, especially in this time, we will assist our collective progress. At night, you have pedestrians getting into the environment in dark clothes, making it very difficult for drivers to pick them out.
Okay.
You drive around town, sometimes you find very pathetic scenes of young people, sometimes as young as 6 or less, by the roadside, struggling to cross the road, to the full glare of adult users who overlook them because they are not their kids. But again, if you go into the figures of the 41% of pedestrian deaths, close to 23% are children of school-going age.
And that's very sad.
Yes, many of them struggle to use the road by virtue of how our urban areas have been planned. The child would necessarily have to cross the road from one point or the other in order to get to school and back. So we all have to assume a certain level of responsibility, much as there are public institutions like the Commission that have been entrusted with the public duty.
Kwame, in wrapping up, I want us to focus on Christmas and then the New Year. If you are to speak to drivers, pedestrians, and passengers, what would be your word of caution or advice to them?
Well, we think that we need to reflect on the family. In times like this is an occasion for merrymaking, getting together after a stressful or promising year, however one looks at it. So as drivers, it's important that we observe these traffic regulations. As commercial drivers, you may have the tendency to speed because there are a number of passengers at your terminal looking for vehicles to their destination. You have to take a lot of rest and also respect the speed limits. We want to encourage passengers to also speak up once you join a bus. Even in taking a decision, if you go into a terminal and a bus assigned for your trip is not worthy enough, I'm sure if you got 1 or 2 or 3 people to raise a voice, the heads of the terminal will be compelled to make a change or to give you another bus. In the trip or in the course of the journey, if passengers observe any conduct that pose danger to their lives, we encourage them to speak up against it. Pedestrians will have to look out for pedestrian crossing points, especially as we take to parties at night. We must ensure that we work close that a bit bright, that will make us visible, so that drivers will see us in order for us to reduce incidents of knockdown. I'm sure if we did this on our own and get the clergy to also talk to their congregation and encourage very much what the media is doing, and all of us as stakeholders, if we were to raise our commitments a little bit than we can make it is now, we can make a significant difference.
Okay. All right. Let me say thank you to you, Kwame Kodio-Etuahene, who's the head of communications at the National Road Safety Commission. Stick and stay with us. We'll be back shortly.